Have you ever spent hours embroidering a piece and then you're not too sure what to do with them? Well, that happened to me so many times. I've been embroidering for years, and at the end of the piece, I was often quite puzzled what to do. It's true, these days we don't make that many aprons or, napkins, things like that. So we need to find new ways to use our embroidery pieces proudly. So I obviously kept a few that were in the hoops. I gifted some, but there's so much you can exhibit on your walls or, give to others, and the rest of it just stays in drawers, and that's no good. Of course, you could always embroider your piece directly on your garment and then you get to wear it with that special outfit. Or you could turn it into a patch, embroider it on your favorite fabric or the most see-through, perhaps, and then mount it on a special garment as you would with like any regular patch. But then that's not very versatile. You can't change the outfit and your embroidery is set on one specific place. So this is why I decided to turn mine into brooches that I can actually put on any outfit that fits. Now, today I want to show you how I do that and all the steps that are required to turn your beautiful embroidery into your favorite brooches. I am going to demonstrate to you how to do it by using this hedgehog embroidery pattern that you can actually find in my community Seasons of Crafting circle in my school group. It's completely free in the classroom, and I'm going to show you all the different steps that you need to take to make that cute hedgehog into your own brooch. To do so, we are going to need just a few materials. So first of all, your embroidery piece, whichever it is. You're also going to need a brooch backing attachment. I actually recommend that you look for one that is as large as your embroidery piece, but whichever you might find. Sometimes it's a bit tricky to find the exact right size. You're going to need some embroidery thread, a piece of felt fabric, and this is optional, but if you have some interfacing scraps work perfect, then this is also very helpful. And then obviously a needle, some scissors, and an iron, especially if you are using that interfacing. Okay, let's do it. Our very first step is gonna be to grab a pen. I'm using a friction pen, which is heat sensitive, but any fabric pen could work out. And then I am going to trace a line around my embroidery piece. So I'm basically leaving maybe 5 or 6 millimeters around my embroidery drawing. Like that. Doesn't have to be perfect, just a line around. And now I'm going to cut around. Now that it's completely cut out, I'm going to use my interfacing if you're using any, and I'm going to place it on top of that shiny piece, because that shiny piece is the gluey piece, gluey side. So I'm going to place it on top like that, and then I'm going to trace around the shape that I just created. So I'm kind of using my embroidery piece as a pattern to have that exact same shape. Right, so I've traced it, and now I'm going to cut it out exactly as we did with the embroidery piece. By the way, I'm using some kind of medium weight interfacing. I recommend you use, any leftovers you might have. It's just to give a bit more holding to your brooch afterwards. So once you've cut it out, we are going to place our embroidery piece on top, matching all the edges, And we are going to go to the ironing board and we are going to fuse the two together. Okay, so I'm going to grab my iron. I've been careful to align my interfacing and then my embroidery piece together. And then I'm just going with my iron like that. And I'm actually trying to iron as little as I can my embroidery piece. So I'm just going around gently. So it's basically fusing the outside part. My iron is not using any steam, and you can see the middle part is definitely not fused together. So I'm going to do it gently like that from the back of it. The reason I do that is I really want to be as gentle as I can with the ironing on my stitches, because it's going to flatten them out and then they're going to lose that volume. So I really want to iron just as much as needed to fuse the two pieces without altering my embroidery stitch. And then once I've fused the two pieces together, if I wanted to fuse my embroidery piece, I'm going to place it on top of a felt fabric, and using my friction pen once again, I'm tracing around. There we go. And then I'm going to cut it out. Okay, so now I'm going to place all my pieces together like that. You might want to pin it if you want. I'm not going to do it because I really don't want any holes on my fabric. But if it feels more comfortable, then do whatever feels good to you. And then I'm just going to stitch around the edges with my embroidery thread. I'm going to pick a color that is very similar to my bag fabric. I used some old pillowcases, so it's kind of off-white and it's actually the same as the tummy color. So I'm going to pick an off-white embroidery thread, and to do so I'm also going to make sure that I keep my 6 strands. Now if you've been embroidering with me, you know I don't do that very often. This part of the project I'm going to use the 6 strands of my embroidery thread. So I'm doing a knot at the end of my thread, and I've chosen quite a long thread for me because the idea is to have as little connection as we can around. I'm gonna hide my knot inside in the sandwich, if you see what I mean, like that. And then we are going to do just a very basic stitch going around like that. And we are going to do that all around, trying to keep the same distance from the edge for our stitches as we go, so it looks quite like one line, if you know what I mean. We want these stitches to look very discreet like that, but to make sure there's no thread coming out. If you wanted, you could also make your job easier by using sewing clips to hold everything in place. You don't have to, but if you're more comfortable. And I'm using an overcast stitch all around, but you could also use a blanket stitch if you preferred. It's just, I do like that nice kind of border that the overcast stitch create. Now, as I go around, I want to make sure that my stitches go right next to my embroidery piece, but not overlap. We don't want the border to go on top of the original embroidery. And keep on going like that, making sure that your beginning of the stitch of the thread is inside sandwiched. If you need to change thread as you go because you run out, again you hide your knot, your end knot inside and your beginning knot inside again, so it should be all seamless. When you have a bit of a curve like that, make sure you distribute your stitches across so that they follow the curve and they don't end up being all stacked up and straight. Once you've done your outcast stitch all around, you're going to want to finish it off. So I'm going to do it through the back. I am putting my needle through the felt like that. So the great thing with felt is you can just grab the few top fibers. And then I'm going to go once around, twice around. I'm putting my thumb on top of those thread over and I'm pulling it. That's creating a tiny knot, and then I'm putting my needle right through that felt but not all the way to the front, pulling my thread, and then I'm trimming it off. We are completely ready to attach the brooch attachment at the back of it. Now to do so, I am not going to use my embroidery thread, which I find a bit more fragile. I'm just going to use my regular sewing thread. Now to make that attachment extra secure, I am using my thread in double and I'm creating a knot at the end of it. I am going to place my brooch like that. I prefer to put it slightly more towards the top than the bottom because I find that other way the brooch tend to bend or move a bit more. I am gonna sew right through that backing only, so through the felt fabric and not through my front embroidery piece. That's very important, you don't want to ruin your work. And then I've put my knot in my felt, and then my brooch backing has a few holes in it, and I'm basically making my needle going through those holes and then attaching it with that fabric. So again, you make sure that you really go through only that wool felt. The good thing with wool felt is that it is quite thick and therefore you have a few layers you can stitch through without going all the way through your front fabric. I'm actually going to do like a few stitches in each hole to really make sure it is attached securely, because we don't want to lose the brooch. We have spent so much time making it. Like that. So I would say maybe 6 to 8 stitches in each hole. Once you have completed all your stitches, obviously you repeat that same steps for as many holes as you have. Sometimes the brooch attachment have less, sometimes they have more. And then we are going to go right through the wall like that. And we're going to use that knot method that I showed you earlier on, like the kind of French knot. So I am turning around my needles 3 times this time. I'm holding that and I am pulling it through tightly, and then I go through my wool to hide my thread. And we have completed our brooch from our embroidery piece. Now you get to wear proudly your piece of embroidery. Now I'm not gonna lie, every single time I wear those brooches, handmade, I get tons of compliments. People are always interested to know what it's made of and how I did it. I hope this will be a great way for you to actually pick up all those embroidery pieces that you might have left on a drawer and turn them into something beautiful that you'll be able to wear days after day. If you're interested in making that tiny little guy, please head over to my bio where you'll find the link to join my free group where the class to make the hedgehog is completely free. I wish you a beautiful day.